What's going on, people? Welcome back to another episode of the Fantasy Football Busters. Today is currently August 25th. I believe today is a Thursday. My name is Will. It's the co-host Eric. And
Going on,
today,
everybody?
dog, how you feeling today, man?
I'm feeling good. I'm excited to talk wide receivers. We've said it every time, we're hoping to disagree. We think that this could be the one where we disagree the most. I still hope that, but I don't know. We keep agreeing on everything. We need some different content, some different perspectives here. So I'm hoping we get that today.
Hey, bro, if you want, man, I can get some people on here to get us some different perspectives if you want that. I was talking to my boy GL yesterday because he's trying to start
Hmm.
a small fantasy football league for just like all of us to do music. And he was
Yeah.
like, "Yeah, man, I got a sneaky pick that no one's gonna think of." And I was like, just curious, because no one else is here, and I do this. I was like, Who's your sneaky pick?" He was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, somebody nobody's gonna see coming." And I was like, "Well, who is it?" He goes, "Jonathan Taylor." And I was like, "Bro,
Yeah. So the perspectives that I want are probably not his.
yeah." Because
But
I talked to him, I was like, "Yeah, that's very far off base," but
yeah.
we're here to give you guys some good fantasy football news. Every once in a while, we might bring in somebody who sort of knows how fantasy football works. I'm terrified of that draft. But today we're going to talk about some of the one of the more exciting positions in fantasy once again. We got the wide receiver group. We're going to be giving our top 24 of these wide receivers in fantasy. And like Eric said, we're hoping to kind of disagree here. We kind of see eye to eye on a lot of stuff, but at the end of the day, kind of the stats are what they are. But we do want to give you some different perspectives, give you some different players to look out for, and hopefully we can do that for you today. So I guess to kick things off, it's funny because we're probably going to agree pretty much immediately again. But my number one overall wide receiver is Mr. Justin Jefferson going into this season, just because of all the hype that the Vikings have helped build around him, with the new coaching staff saying that they want to use Justin Jefferson in the Cooper Cup capacity, which, as we saw last year, was extremely effective. And I believe that Justin Jefferson has a lot more athletic tools as a receiver to be able to do what Cooper Cup did at even maybe even a higher level. I don't think that Justin Jefferson has the same football IQ that Cooper Cup does. I don't think a lot of wide receivers do. But when it comes to tools in the tool chest, there's not many receivers with as many as Justin Jefferson has.
Yeah, we are going to agree here. I also have Justin Jefferson as my wide receiver one. It's real tight between him and Cooper Cup. Obviously,
Mm-hmm.
Cooper Cup just put up, the greatest fantasy wide receiver season we've seen. Um, I think for me, it's more of pick the young ascending talent in an upcoming offense as opposed to the maybe not declining. You can make the argument, Cooper Cup is kind of aging out, but obviously he's still going to have a crazy season. But Jay Jets is 23 years old. He's coming off of a wide receiver four finish last year. He just set the record for most receiving yards through, the first two seasons of a career with over 3,000. He's coming into year three. He gets the new head coach, Kevin O'Connell, who came over from LA last year. He was the offensive coordinator there and helped facilitate that Cooper Cup season that we saw. And like you said, he plans to use him in the same kind of Cooper Cup role. And what that role means for Jefferson is a lot more easy, high percentage targets, more mismatches on linebackers or slot corners or whatever. We've even seen him lining up in the backfield, running routes out of the backfield so far in training camp, which is just a really cool, exciting way to see him used. And I think it's just going to make for, a crazy fantasy season for him and make it a lot easier on that offense, Kirk Cousins, Justin Jefferson as a whole.
Definitely agree with all of that. Justin Jefferson's just he's been one of those guys just about since he's entered the league, especially when he got that opportunity the second half of his rookie season. I think yeah, it's just yeah. Then just moving on to number 2, as we've already kind of alluded to, Mr. Cooper Cup, the God, the former Triple Crown winner, one of the best fantasy football seasons we've ever seen. It's just the biggest worry right now about Cooper Cup is Matt Stafford and just how his elbow is progressing with the tendonitis. At first, I wasn't super concerned about it. It's kind of become a little bit more of a concern over time, but I still believe that one, Matt Stafford has the ability to still get the ball out to Cooper Cup, and two, Cooper Cup still has the ability to get open. That's like his biggest asset is his mind and how he reads defenses, how he sees defenses, and his technique. His technique is just about unparalleled when it comes to just how a wide receiver approaches the game. So that means that I've got Cooper Cup at number two.
Yeah, I mean, not a ton needs to be said here. He
Yeah.
he was the best last season. He was the most valuable player in all of fantasy, regardless of position last year. Um, and I don't see a whole lot changing. Like you said, Matt Stafford is kind of a red flag here with his elbow issues. You've mentioned in previous videos that he's got the toughness. He plays through all of the injuries that he's had so far in his career, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm I'm not so sure that this one is just about like pain management. I think this one could uh, be a little bit more serious than that. Not that I'm saying we should be off Cooper Cup. Obviously, I have him at two. There hasn't been any like serious indication that this is going to, keep Matt Stafford out of games yet, but it's definitely something to monitor. Another thing that I wanted to bring up is that with Allen Robinson coming to town,
Mm-hmm.
um, he's not necessarily the best wide receiver too that we've seen here. We've had the likes of Odell and Robert Woods. You can make the argument who's better there, but I think he's probably the first like true like alpha big body outside wide receiver that we've seen alongside Cooper Cup, and I think that that's probably going to take away some of Cooper's red zone targets. They've made a lot of Allen Robinson's ability in the red zone so far throughout training camp, and I think that's going to be good for him, obviously, but it might take away a little bit from Cooper Cup's upside.
I agree with that. I do think it's going to take away from. I think it's going to take away from Cooper Cup's touchdown numbers, but I still think
Yeah,
he's going to be hyper involved in this offense, as you do too.
100%.
And it's just, yeah, he was the best. I think he's the best value we've ever seen in a fantasy football player, like after last season, because the fact that he was what, like a fifth round pick, sixth round pick,
Yeah,
and ended up as the wide receiver one, pulling off a historic season is crazy.
yeah,
So who would you
um,
say is number three? I feel like we're going to see eye
yeah.
to eye on
So
this as well.
probably, yeah. The top two are in a tier of their own for me, and this starts another tier of three guys led by Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase is in a similar mold to Justin Jefferson. He just broke Justin Jefferson's rookie receiving yards record last year. Um, he was fourth in the NFL in receiving yards last year, despite being 18th in the NFL in targets, which I find crazy. Like the volume wasn't necessarily there. He was hyper efficient. He's just crazy talented. If his target share goes up from 23.9%, which it was last year, which it should, I mean, it's scary to think about the kind of numbers that he could put up. The only real like downsides or negatives that I can put towards Chase is that I don't think the Bengals are going to unleash Burrow and go super pass heavy. That's something that we've talked about in previous videos.
Mm-hmm.
I think that they're going to kind of stay with that same run to pass ratio that they've had. Um, again, I think that his target share is going to go up, but also Burrow's numbers were crazy efficient, like off the charts efficient. I expect that to regress. It was the same for Chase, where he had probably an unsustainable touchdown rate of over 14%. Like if you compare that to some of the guys that were just barely above him last year, and Justin Jefferson and Devontae Adams, they both had TD rates that were under 9%. So I expect that number to come down for him. I expect target share to go up, probably yards to go up by even a little bit, touchdowns to either stay the same or maybe come down. So it's probably going to even out to a similar finish to where he was last year, but it's really hard for me to bet against a guy that's like already coming for potentially being the best wide receiver in the league.
I was gonna say, me personally, I mirror all the same sentiments. The only thing that I would change is that I still have Jamar Chase in that same kind of tier as Cooper Cup and Justin Jefferson, and that's just how much
Yeah,
I believe in him as a talent. I do
yeah,
believe that all the regression is going to come to Joe Burrow and the Bengals, but I think a lot of what's going to come down, or at least be mitigated, is going to go towards Jamar Chase and them realizing that he's the guy. Because as of like you said, a lot of last year he was operating as not the guy, but he put up
right.
numbers as if he were. So
Yeah.
just to see him operating in that role, we may even just see an explosion in his productivity. But it all stands to be seen, and I do think they are going to hit some regression. And but Jamar Chase just as a talent, he just I don't think he can really be denied. I think he has to be put up there with Cup and Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, I can't really argue with you. I definitely debated on where to draw that line in those tiers. Um, it's tough for me. I think it's more of belief in the offenses with Sean McVay out in
Mm-hmm.
LA, and Kevin O'Connell with the Vikings, and not so much in Zach Taylor with the Bengals. But I can't really argue with you there if you want to put him up in that group. I think he has the potential to finish as the overall wide receiver one within his range of outcomes. So I don't have an issue with that at all.
Yeah, appreciate that, dog.
Mm-hmm.
Hell yeah. Hopefully stuff.
Um,
Damn, bro. We told these people we are gonna give them something different. Our top three are the same, but you can't.
yeah,
It's that's what I'm saying when I'm saying you got to believe the stats at a certain point. It is what
yeah.
it is.
Maybe once we get into like outside the top 10 or so,
Yeah, I think so.
that's when things will get a little mixy. But yeah, we'll get on to number four. Mine is Stephon Diggs. People seem to think that Stephon Diggs had a disappointing season last year, but he still finishes the wide receiver seven. His fantasy stats may have come down from his first season in Buffalo, but like his peripheral numbers didn't at all. In fact, most of them went up. He had the same amount of total targets, more air yards, and more red zone targets in 2021 than he did in 2020. And he actually scored the most touchdowns of his career last year. So I think it was more of just a little bit of bad luck between him and Josh Allen and their connection. They weren't connecting on the deep balls like they were in 2020, and I expect that to kind of correct itself going into 2022. Um, and I also just have so much belief in this Buffalo offense, and like their pass rate is going to be ridiculous. They're really going to test the boundaries of the NFL this year. I think like they're going to pass more than maybe any team we've ever seen. So I think he's also got wide receiver one in his range of outcomes. He's another guy that you could potentially, if you wanted, put up in that same tier with the guys at the top.
Definitely like to. I mirror a lot of those. I don't have Diggs quite as high, but I do. The Bills are an interesting team to watch just because they practice in the conditions that they do. That they often throw the ball in situations you would never think. Like
Yeah.
it's so many times you watch like a Buffalo Bills like a game in the snow or just heavy rain, and Josh Allen's still just peppering throws through, and they're still coming down with them. So it's kind of
Yeah.
amazing to see that like one of the things people don't really take into account too much of fantasy is looking up the weather for games before. That's sort of something that's a veteran move. A lot of people just start players because of the teams, but when you look at the weather, it plays a huge difference, but it doesn't when it comes to Josh Allen and the Bills for some reason.
It's throwing piss missiles through the wind, dude. It doesn't
Yeah,
matter.
he does not care, and Diggs comes down with them. Everybody they know how to play in bad conditions, and that's just
yeah.
huge for a team and huge for a wide receiver. Me personally, I have Devonte Adams at 4, just because I do believe in Devonte Adams as a talent. I do believe I'm a firm believer in the college connection. As you guys know, he went to Fresno State with Derek Carr, so it's just one of those things where I don't think Devontae is going to be as targeted as he was in Green Bay because they didn't really have too much they were throwing the ball to. Derek Carr has a rapport with Darren Waller and Hunter Renfro at this point as well. But in terms of just red zone targets, uh, Devonte Adams' sort of efficiency as a receiver has been sort of unmatched. But we are going into a year where we're going to see just how efficient he is as a receiver because he's in a new team, he's on a new situation. I just reversed those two words. But I think Devonte Adams has that potential also to end as the wide receiver one if given that same sort of opportunity. So it's gonna remain to be seen how the team operates with him. But the fact that Devonte Adams does get along as well as he does with Derek Carr, he is the player that he is, and I don't think that he's gotten to a point where age is gonna make a difference. I know he's what 29 this year, going on
I
30.
believe so, yeah.
I don't feel like we've seen him take a step back at all yet in terms of his productivity and his efficiency and just him as a player. So I give the nod to Devonte Adams at 4 and sort of rolling into 5. That's where I have Stephon Diggs placed, just slightly below. I think that Buffalo offense is going to be amazing. I'm wondering how the breakdown is going to end up being because just watching his preseason games, Gabriel Davis has kind of gotten an annoying amount of work as well. I don't think that's going to affect Diggs a lot. I think he is the alpha wide receiver in this offense. He is the number one. He is that guy who sort of had these sneakily amazing seasons the past couple years. that people haven't really paid a whole lot of attention to because the seasons he's been doing it, people have been doing also incredible stuff around him. But like you said, his range of outcomes is as a wide receiver one. He's got everything you could look for in a wide receiver. He tore my ACL in high school, so that's probably why I bumped him below Devonte Adams. But I've got Diggs at the number 5 spot just because I do believe in that Buffalo offense. I believe in Josh Allen, and they're just going to be an amazing team. I think it's probably just bias that's bumped him down to this 5 spot for me, honestly.
Yeah, I again, we're pretty much in lockstep. This is kind of disappointing. I have Devonte Adams at 5, so
God
we're
damn
right
it.
there in that same range. We'll get there. We'll find some eventually. But here, let me pull this up. So yeah, I agreed with most of what you were saying about Devonte, right? I think Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase are kind of creeping up on him, but Devonte Adams is still the best wide receiver in the league. He hasn't hit an age cliff yet. He's not declining. He's still just as athletic, just as savvy as he always has been. But he's going into he has a very big quarterback downgrade, in my opinion. Derek Carr's a good quarterback, but he's not Aaron Rodgers.
Hall of Famer, man. He's a Hall of Famer.
Can make the argument, I guess. Um,
No, you can't.
but yeah, I mean, like, yeah, you mentioned the connection, right, with Carr going back to Fresno State with Devontae Adams. I think that that's real. I think that that's important, and I think that that's going to factor in coming into the season. But the chemistry and connection that Rodgers had with Devontae Adams and that mind meld that they had in Green Bay was unreal. It was so, so special, and it's just not going to be the same, even with that college connection, in my opinion, for Carr and Adams. Um, but some positives that I can talk about here that the Raiders are in a division where they're going to have to throw to keep up. They're going to be in a lot of shootouts, I would imagine, and the Raiders' pass rate this year is definitely going to be higher than what the Packers has been in recent years. Packers have been really slow paced. It's all about efficiency there. Their numbers in terms of passing, just for Aaron Rodgers, have been really low actually, and so I see that going up coming into the Raiders' offense. Overall, I think the situation change is still a downgrade, but Devontae is going to be Devontae, and so of course he's got wide receiver one in his range of outcomes as the best receiver in the league.
Yeah, I agree 100%. It's just funny, man. It's just still in lockstep. God damn it.
Yeah. Well, let's see. Let's keep going. See if we can start to differ. This also starts a new tier of three guys for me, starting with CeeDee Lamb. I'm nervous about this one. I'm definitely nervous about this one. He hasn't shown a true breakout yet, but this is one of the few cases where I think the vacated targets argument is actually fair. I think CD is good enough and talented enough to earn a lion's share of those vacated targets. Amari Cooper is gone. Michael Gallup won't be back for a while, and even when he comes back, he won't be himself right away. He's playing in one of the fastest paced and most heavy or pass heavy teams in the league, and they're also one of the highest scoring teams. So in that sense, like CD is set up really well for a breakout. Um, but on the flip side, like there have been questions about the Dallas offensive line coming into this year, as compared to last year and previous seasons. Lyle Collins left. Some of the interior has gotten a little changed up. Tyron Smith, we just got word today, he tore his hamstring and is going to be out indefinitely. So
Mm-hmm.
that's going to be a huge impact on that offense as a whole. Reports out of training camp, and especially from the joint practices that the Cowboys have had with other teams, have all been pretty negative. They're saying that the offenses look pretty rough. Things aren't going smoothly out in Dallas. You can choose how much stock you want to put into that, but it's definitely something to monitor and something that makes me nervous. Like I said earlier, like CD, this is kind of a put up or shut up year for him. He needs to prove himself, prove that he can be that true wide receiver one alpha receiver. I think he's poised to do it. I think the situation is perfect for things to go right for him. It's just whether he's actually going to execute or not.
Yeah, it's that offense is a little bit concerning because everyone wants to bring up their productivity from last year, but they're ignoring the fact that that team is very different than it was last year, just in terms of the talent they have. They were one of the best passing offenses, and just yeah, they just don't nearly have all of the weapons that they really had. Losing Amari Cooper is huge. But it's funny. I made a face when you first said that because my number six is also CD Lamb. I mirror all the sentiments that you have. I know you in general aren't really a big fan of vacated targets, but like you said, I think they do play a huge factor. The fact that CD Lamb finished as well as he did last year and only had an 18% target share, and he's going into this year with a just an alpha dog role, and the fact that he doesn't have Michael Gallup alongside him to start the season. I know he's been running routes, but he hasn't actually been practicing in sevens or 11s, anything like that. No contact. James Washington's out for however long, but who knows how relevant he was going to be in the first place. So it really is just CeeDee Lamb, Jalen Tolbert, and Dalton Schultz to start the season along with the running back core.
Yeah.
So in terms of opportunity, CeeDee Lamb has all the opportunity in the world, which is why he is this high. It's just because I feel like he's going to have to be an integral part of this offense if they're going to have see any type of success. Now, Dak is a talented enough quarterback to get him the ball. CeeDee Lamb is a talented enough receiver to get the ball. It's just a matter of if this offense is able to stay on the field because, like you said, they've gotten so many big hits that it's going to be tough. But they do have a great defense. They should still be in games. It's just a matter of if CeeDee Lamb can do it. So this is going to be the first year, like you said, we're going to see if CeeDee Lamb can do it. And me personally, I think he can.
Yeah. Yeah. I mentioned that I was hesitant putting him at six. I think it's fair to have him there, but when we're talking about drafts, he's somebody that I'm not really targeting. Um, I like my next guy at number seven, Mike Evans, a little bit more, especially because I think he's going a little bit later. But we can talk more about that strategy wise, especially next week. I think we're going to
Mm-hmm.
do a mock draft video. And so that'll be really insightful as far as like who to target in each round and stuff like that. But
Mm-hmm.
we'll get into number seven. I got Mike Evans. As Evan Silva likes to say, he was born and put on this earth to score touchdowns. The guy is a touchdown monster. He just seems to do it every single season. He's also put up 1,000 yards in every single season. He's just crazy consistent. Um, Again, he's got that connection with Tom Brady. Chris Godwin is coming back off of an injury. If he even plays in week one, he's going to be ramped up slowly. Won't be back to his true self probably until like week four, week five, somewhere in there. We got a lot of turnover. Like Gronkowski's gone. Julio comes in. We'll see what he's still got left in the tank. Russell Gage comes in. He's been dealing with some nagging injuries so far throughout training camp. I just think Mike Evans is set up to smash. And with like the positive reports around Chris Godwin and these other pass catchers that have come in, I think it's actually pushing Mike Evans down in ADP to where he's becoming an even better value. And so I like him a lot this year. Again, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense is just crazy. Their pass rate is super high. The amount of red zone opportunities and scoring opportunities that they get is super high. So I love the environment that Mike Evans is in and the talent that he is.
Yeah, Mike Evans is like continuously one of those players that I sleep on in fantasy every year just because I'm like, oh, there's no way he can do it again. And he does it again every year. So it's just, he's super consistent. Super consistent. But my number seven is actually Debo Samuel. I have Debo at seven just because he's kind of proven, especially this last year, that he can still be a viable fantasy wide receiver. Not even a viable, an elite fantasy wide receiver without even catching the ball, like playing running back, which is something we've never really seen. I do think there's going to be some touchdown regression, especially on the rushing side of things. I think he finished with 8 rushing touchdowns last year. That's
Yeah.
definitely going to come down. I don't see that being the same, especially with him. There have been sort of conflicting reports. I remember we had talked earlier about how there were reports early on saying that he didn't want to run the ball as much as they used him to run the ball. And that's sort of been phased out. That narrative has sort of been changed over time, saying that I don't mind running the ball now. But of course,
You
he's
just
going to
want to
say
get
that,
paid for it, man.
yeah, he's got his contract.
Yeah.
So Debo, what he had 1,400 receiving yards last year, almost 400 rushing yards, 8 rushing touchdowns, 6 receiving touchdowns. I expect to see the rushing come down just because Trey Lance is a quarterback. He is as dynamic of a player as he is. And the fact that they should have a full stable of running backs, that Debo should only be used as a gadget player when it comes to rushing plays. But he has proven that he can be at least a great receiving option. The numbers he put up, I guess, technically weren't elite in terms of his receiving, but the fact that he was used as much for rushing. What would you say about that? Were his receiving numbers elite?
I think so.
I think 1,400
Like
yards and 6 touchdowns is elite, right?
from from a separation standpoint, like if you go and look at Matt Harmon's reception perception,
Mm-hmm.
he wasn't elite across the board on all routes and versus all coverage types.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but just from a pure numbers standpoint, yeah, I think his production was definitely elite. I mean, he was the wide receiver two
Mm-hmm.
last year, um, and put up over 300 half PPR fantasy points, which I had a little rant about him in our what NFC West
Mm-hmm.
divisional breakdown, um, where I was talking about how in previous years he would have been the wide receiver one overall, going back to I think 2016 had he put up those numbers. So yeah, he's definitely elite. I'll let you continue because I do have him as my number eight. I'll talk about him next.
Okay, I mean, I was wrapping up at that point. Debo Samuel he's a baller, and he is just about always going to be on the field. He's an integral part of this team. The coaching staff loves him. They love him as the player that he is. And if there's one thing we know about Kyle Shanahan, he loves those sort of players that will grind out. And Debo is definitely one of those players that will grind. So, yeah, I've got Debo at my number 7.
Loves his yak gods.
Yak
That's what he's
God.
got. He's
Yeah.
got him in spades with Debo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, and George Kittle. Yeah, I got Debo at eight. I will start with the negatives, I guess. Um, Trey Lance coming in at quarterback makes me a little nervous. They're going to go more run heavy because Trey Lance is good at that. They were already super run heavy, and Debo had to rely on efficiency like crazy last year. He had one of the lowest A dots in the league last year. Average depth of target is what A dot is, but he still managed to have one of the highest yards per reception uh, rankings in the league. So like the disparity between those two is crazy, and it shows you how good he is as a player and how good he is with yards after the catch. But that efficiency is like through the roof. It's got to regress. I don't think it's going to come down like crazy because Debo is just that good, and that's the type of player that he is. But he was crazy efficient from a touchdown perspective, from converting low A dot to high yardage. And I think if volume goes down as well, it's going to be really hard to repeat any of those numbers. But then, positive end of the spectrum, I think Trey Lance overall is an upgrade from Jimmy Garoppolo. A lot of people are worried about that, but what he can do from like an arm talent perspective, pushing the ball down the field is unlocking a key to this offense that Jimmy Garoppolo didn't provide. And so I think Debo could be used more in the intermediate and deep passing game in ways that he wasn't last year and in previous years. And I think, like you said, Kyle Shanahan knows what he has in Debo. He's just that guy. Like he's such a special talent. You got to get the ball in his hands as much as you possibly can. So that's why I kind of have him at the end of this tier. I'm nervous in some regards as far as efficiency coming down and Trey Lance with the volume of passing, but also it's going to be exciting to watch the way that he's deployed and the new ways that Trey Lance can kind of unlock him as a receiver.
100% agree because I'm really excited to see how Trey Lance sort of develops as a quarterback and just having a Debo Samuel and a Brandon Ayuk and a George Kittle. This offense is going to be really exciting to watch.
Yeah.
And to round that out, sort of round that tier out as well, at my number 8, this is where I place Mike Evans. He's one of those guys, man. It's like I kind of said earlier, like Eric said, he's just consistently good every year. He was put on this planet to score touchdowns. He had 14 of them last year, 13 the year prior. I believe eight. His lowest was 3. That was a few years back. That was like his second year in the league. Ever since then, he has been the 1,000-yard receiver. He has been a red zone target. He's been one of Tom Brady's favorite targets. And as we know, that means a lot when it comes to football and who's getting the ball. When you've earned Tom Brady's trust, you're going to be one of those guys. And Mike Evans has proven that he is one of those guys no matter who is throwing him the ball. So, yeah, I don't really think there's too much to say. Mike Evans is consistently sort of slept on. Everyone always says, oh, this is the year that he takes a step back. And he never really does. If anything, he's usually taken a step up. Or at least he's been exactly the same. But even last year, I think he only had, what, a 16% target share? It was
Um,
somewhere from like 15 to 18. It was actually really surprising when I looked it up. Let me see actually.
yeah, I can try to pull it up. I don't have it in front of me. Mike Evans. Shout out player profiler.
Mhm.
Where I'm headed. Target share 19%.
19%. But still,
Yeah.
that's not a whole that's not
Sorry,
a
that's target rate. No, 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 you were right. Target share was only 16.4%. His target rate was
okay.
19.2. That's really surprising to me, actually.
Yeah, I'd seen that when I was just making this I was putting this list together and it's like you would think that a receiver that has a 16% target share but puts up double digit touchdowns, that's somebody that you're not going to look at because you're like, "Oh, that's a crazy level of efficiency." But with Mike Evans, I don't really get that same concern because he is the player that he is. Like, you could say a receiver that's what a 6 foot tall receiver that's a 195 has a 16% target share. Yeah, I'm fading him. But this guy is 6'5", 231, red zone
Yeah.
threat, has proven nothing but to be that. So it's just yeah, Mike Evans, he's my number 8 receiver in fantasy, even though he's a 16% target share coming off of last year.
Yeah, and if, Chris Godwin takes a little while to ramp up, if these other receiving options take a little while to kind of assimilate and gain chemistry with Tom Brady, that target share is just going to increase this year. So
And there's no
I think
Gronk.
it's looking good for him.
There's also
And there's
no
no
Gronk.
Gronk.
So that's also
Yeah,
huge for Mike Evans as well.
yeah, very good point. So that rounds out another tier for me and starts a really, really big tier of 10 guys, almost all of which I'm targeting really heavy in the middle rounds of fantasy drafts that I've been doing in mocks and things like that so far. And it starts off with Mike Williams. And this is going to be, I'm going to say this for a couple receivers on this list. I'm pounding the table for guys that are obviously talented receivers but in incredible offenses with really good quarterbacks that are high pass volume, really efficient, like fast paced.
Okay.
And that's like all of that applies to Mike Evans. I do think that he surpasses Keenan Allen as the wide receiver one, at least in terms of fantasy protection this year. He did it last year as well. He finished as the wide receiver 10. Even though he was inconsistent at times, there was definitely a stretch there in the middle of the season where he wasn't a super usable fantasy asset, but he kind of bookended that with just crazy boom games of like over 20, sometimes over 30 fantasy points. And that was in the first year with their new offensive coordinator, I think Mike Lombardi. Um, so he gets to come into year two, and Lombardi has talked about using him the same way. He came from New Orleans originally. Talked about using him in like the Michael Thomas role, and I think that we see more of that coming into year two under the new OC. We definitely saw that in spurts where his average depth of target came down quite a bit. In his earlier career, he was used mostly as a deep threat, but now we're seeing him used more as a possession guy. He's actually running more of the route tree. He's just more consistent overall. And I think we're going to see a jump in that this year. And then Justin Herbert, he's a god. They're in a division that's going to mean they have to they're going to have to throw a lot. It's going to
Mm-hmm.
be a lot of shootouts. They're going to have to score a lot of points. And I think his touchdown upside is ridiculous. They use him like crazy in the red zone. And even with, what did he score last season? He scored 9 receiving touchdowns last year, which is already like a pretty good number to put up. Um, but relative to like what was expected of him, his expected touchdown rate was way higher. I think had he hit like the numbers that were expected of him based on opportunity, he would have scored 13 or 14 touchdowns last year. So if we see a jump of 3, 4, 5 touchdowns for him, we're talking potentially top 5 range for Mike Williams. I think that consistency is the thing that holds him back a little bit, but
Mm-hmm.
I love his upside here at number 9.
I agree with a lot of those sentiments. It's never been a question of talent with Mike Williams whatsoever, ever. It's just, yeah, it's just that consistency. I don't know. This is just a quick aside, but did you see the clip of Brandon Staley talking to the cornerbacks?
I did not.
There was actually a clip. I think I saw it yesterday. It was him talking to the corners and just saying like I guess mainly to the rookies, saying, "Yeah, you guys are coming into the league. You think you're hot shit, this and that." He said, "Bet you're gonna go out there and you're gonna guard Mike Williams and you're gonna guard Keenan Allen, and we're gonna find out how good you are." He's like, "Cause that's two $20 million receivers, and they don't get paid $20 million to be okay."
Yeah, I love that.
Dog, I saw that. I was like, that shit made me want to throw on some pads and get out there. That was sick.
Hell yeah.
So Mike Williams, yeah, he's one of those guys. He's always kind of been the truth, but it's just injuries have sort of kept him off the field, have kind of kept his expectations low. But especially going into this year and just seeing the success he had last year and just how this offense is operating, I can definitely see why you have Mike Williams at 9. I actually have Michael Pittman at 9 for me. I believe in the boom that much. I believe in the hype. I'm buying into it. I think Matt Ryan is a huge upgrade for Michael Pittman going into this year. And we've seen Matt Ryan even as close as last year, even though Calvin Ridley only played a few games. We've seen him be able to support number one wide receivers on good offenses for sure. Now, coming out of the situation that they had in Atlanta, that was a shitty team. I don't care what anybody says. Even now, they're a shitty team. It's the facts. So moving over to Indianapolis, where you have a good offensive line, you've got Matt Ryan at quarterback, you've got Jonathan Taylor at running back, you have all this talent around you, and Michael Pittman finally gets the opportunity to be a wide receiver one with a competent quarterback. Carson Wentz he put up a decent season last year, but a lot of that was empty calories. Didn't really do much for the players themselves either. But with this opportunity that Michael Pittman has, and still having the success that he had last year in an inconsistent situation, I think that only has the opportunity to blow up this year going into this season.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I have him at number 10. So not far off there. I, I do totally agree. Matt Ryan is definitely going to be an upgrade from Carson Wentz. And like you mentioned, we've seen Matt Ryan support high-end wide receiver ones, dating back all the way to Roddy White. He peppered him with over 160 targets. Julio, throughout his dominant seasons, over 160 targets. And we got one season of like full health, I think, from Calvin Ridley, where he did basically the same. The only worry that I have there is that those Falcons teams were much, much pass heavier than I think that this Colts team is going to be coming into this season. Jonathan Taylor is still the focal point for that offense, and I think it's going to run through him. But Frank Reich has come out and said that he wanted to be more balanced. He wanted to be a little bit more pass heavy than he was last year with Carson Wentz. I think he was kind of throwing shots that, now we have a quarterback that we can trust to actually do that with.
He absolutely was. They're
Um,
so petty when it comes to
yeah,
Carson Wentz.
yeah, for sure. So yeah, I think Michael Pittman is clearly and obviously the wide receiver one there. There's not much behind him. So I think he's going to get a huge target share. Also, him just individually, he's incredibly talented. All of the reports coming out of training camp have been just glowing, really, really high praise for Michael Pittman so far this offseason. So yeah, I agree with your take. I got him just one spot lower at 10.
I will say one thing though, just before I do hop onto my number 10. It is a run heavy offense. We do know they run it through Jonathan Taylor, but last year I think Michael Pittman still had like 130 targets. So it's still a guy that they want to get the ball to. He had the eighth highest target share at 24%, and it's just I think the team trusts him at least. Like it might not be a pass heavy team, but I think when they do pass, he's going to get a lot of that volume. So that is why I have him a
That's
little bit
fair.
higher. And it's funny because at my number 10 I have Mike Williams. So
Damn it.
yeah.
We just can't get away from each other.
we fucking we flip flopped them again, and it's sort of mirroring
Hmm.
that same sentiment that we had earlier. I know when we did our I'm blanking on the divisions, AFC West, AFC East divisional breakdown, we both had Mike Williams valued higher than Keenan Allen, even though a lot of people like to think of Keenan Allen as the best receiver, as the alpha on that team. I think we're sort of coming from the camp that Mike Williams is the alpha on this team, whereas Keenan Allen's sort of the aging possession receiver for sure. Like he's still going to get a lot of targets. He's still going to be one of the guys in this offense, sort of a 1A, 1B situation, but I think we're giving the nod more so to Mike Williams than to Keenan Allen.
At least from a fantasy perspective,
Right.
for me. I think just from like a straight up NFL perspective, Keenan Allen's still a dog. He's still one of the best receivers in the league. If you look at I'm forgetting the name. Brandon Marshall and
I am
uh,
athlete.
I am athlete. Yeah,
Hmm.
they've gone on and they've asked a bunch of the current NFL wide receivers like who they think that their top five wide receivers are.
Hmm.
And Keenan Allen has made it into the top five for a lot of those guys. The NFL clearly respects the crap out of him, and I do too.
Hmm.
But from a fantasy perspective solely, I think Mike Williams is going to surpass him this year.
Absolutely. I just I like Mike Williams more from an athletic prospect. I like his, like you said, I like his rate that he's targeted in the red zone a lot. I think he's gonna have a lot of touchdown luck in an offense with a lot of upside because they have to throw the ball in this division that they're in because things should be competitive. We could get into the season and one of these teams could be shitty. We just never know.
Yeah.
But on paper, this should be one of the most competitive and one of the highest scoring divisions in the NFL. And as a result of that, ball is going to get thrown around a lot. These offenses are going to have to keep operating at high levels, and Mike Williams is definitely going to be a beneficiary of that.
Yeah. And staying in the division for my number 11, I got Cortland Sutton. Um,
Oh,
yeah, I'm very, very high on him this year. I think the
okay.
disparity between him and Judy is going to be bigger than people think. I could be eating my words on that, but I think Cortland Sutton is definitely the wide receiver one here. I trust the Denver beat reporters, especially Benjamin Albright, and he's been preaching ever since day one when Russell Wilson walked in that the connection between him and Cortland Sutton has been just amazing. He's clear and away the wide receiver one there. Again, division is going to facilitate a lot of shootouts. The upgrade from Drew Lock and Teddy Bridgewater to Russell Wilson is, leaps and bounds. Like it couldn't be more. I can't overstate how big of a deal that is. It's just going to be huge for him. Cortland Sutton was a guy that didn't produce great fantasy numbers last year, but his peripheral numbers, as far as like his average depth of target, and especially like his air yards, his unconverted, unrealized air yards, was really, really high. And Russell Wilson is a guy that loves the deep ball. He's really, really good at throwing it. So I think he's going to get a lot of deep targets and especially targets in the red zone. I think his touchdown upside in this offense is very, very high. So great quarterback, great offense, probably decent pass volume and touchdown upside. Give me all of Cortland Sutton at wide receiver 11.
I actually love the fact that you put him as high as you did. That's mad respect. It's mad respect.
Appreciate you.
I have him a little bit lower. He did still make my list. He's just a little bit lower on mine, and we'll get into that later. But at my number 11, I've actually got the cheetah. I got Tyreek Hill. I think at a certain point, I think you guys have kind of gotten the gist. If you watched any of our other videos, I really don't like Tua. I think Tua's got a lot that he's got to prove to me before I believe that he's even a quarterback in the NFL. And he's more than just having a job because he was a number two overall pick.
Or you believe that he is a quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah. He's got some work to do because
Bang, 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 bang.
but I believe in Tyreek Hill. I believe that, even Tua can't get the ball more than 20 yards down the field, but Tyreek catching it within 5 to 10, he can still do something with that. He can still make something happen. He's a playmaker through and through. He's going to be involved in this offense one way or another, whether that be through screens, checkdowns, slants. I want to say the deep ball, but like I said, I don't know if Tua can throw it. I haven't seen him do it in practice yet. Those clips have been abysmal. But it's just, I like Tyreek Hill a lot. I think he's going to get a good amount of rushing work too, honestly. I don't
Really?
think they're going to line him up and use him in a Debo Samuel role, but just on those end around stuff like that, Tyreek Hill is known to find some success on plays like that, even though they're more fluke. You can't really count on it. I just believe in Tyreek Hill, the talent. The situation to me isn't great, but as we saw last year with like Jalen Waddle, I look at Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle as two very similar players. They're both on the same team now. So essentially, Tua's got two Jalen Waddles he can check the ball to 5 yards down the field. So they shouldn't both be double covered. So at the very least, he's got two guys he can throw the ball to within 10 yards and find some success with a great player like Tyreek Hill.
Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately we're not going to disagree by that much here. I have Tyreek at my 12.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with a lot of what you had to say. Um, Tyreek is just so talented. He's one of the best receivers in the league. Yes, his target competition is, I guess, going to go up. Like he had Travis Kelsey to compete with in Kansas City. Now he's got Jalen Waddle. the reports are saying that Gesicki might even be traded and that his role is changing a lot. So I don't know that target competition really even changes, to be honest with you. Um, I think that Mike McDaniel is going to find a way to use him really creatively.
Mm-hmm.
And I like just his background and, like you said, what he did with Debo Samuel and how that could translate to the way that he uses Tyreek Hill. Um, I agree. Tua is what scares me here. The lack of downfield ability is going to affect Tyreek Hill for sure. People have made the argument that like 90% of Tyreek Hill's production came within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage, even with Patrick Mahomes last year. And that's true. But that other 10% were those 60, 70, 80-yard bombs
Mm-hmm.
that make up a lot of his fantasy production and those boom weeks that you love to see from Tyreek Hill. Shout out Nick Ercolano over at BDGE. That's kind of his take and the way that he wrapped it up. And I liked what he was saying there. I think that Tyreek Hill, like, you don't want to disrespect him too much. I think he's still the alpha. I think he comes over and puts makes Jalen Waddle the number two. I've also seen that Jalen Waddle has missed the last 2 weeks of training camp with an injury, which scares me a little bit coming into the season. There were videos of him kind of walking gingerly, limping around the field. Hopefully, he gets back to healthy. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I just think that this is going to be a fun and exciting offense to watch, even if Tua can't push it down the field, and Tyreek Hill is going to benefit. So that's where I got him.
That's facts, man. I Tua is something, man. Tua is something. He's really something else.
Not an NFL quarterback,
He's
according to William Norris.
I thought it's just it pisses me off that he's ranked higher than Jameis Winston. But again, we're gonna keep moving forward to my number 12. That's what we're on, right? We're on 12 now.
Yes.
Yeah, my number 12 is AJ Brown. Uh,
Oh,
yeah, it's just the fact that AJ Brown has always sort of finished as a top receiver in fantasy. I know one of the things we're looking at here is that he's in a run heavy offense. He's not really in a pass happy offense, but the fact of the matter is he's never really been in a pass happy offense. He's coming from a team that was run through Derrick Henry, and he could still be extremely productive. I think the word actually is more so extremely efficient with what he does, but I think
yeah.
that speaks more volumes to AJ Brown as a player than as his situation. Now, it is a little bit scarier that he has Jalen Hurts at quarterback, but it's not much scarier than like a Ryan Tannehill, to be honest with you. I don't value Ryan Tannehill over Jalen Hurts whatsoever. Maybe as a passer, but even then, Jalen Hurts is starting to develop a little bit more. I just really do like AJ Brown as a prospect just going into the season. I think he's going to find more touchdown luck this year than he had last year. I know last year he only had 5 touchdowns. Only had 800 yards. He was hurt for. He was out for what 4 games? I think he only played 13. So
Mm-hmm.
one of his biggest things is that he's always hurt somehow. He always kind of finds a way to be hurt, but he always finds a way to the field as well. So I can't knock him for that either. And we also can't project based on injuries. But as a talent, I believe in AJ Brown. And I believe that this offense is going to find ways to get him involved because they did trade for him with the draft capital they had, and they did pay him as much money as they did. And him having Devontae Smith alongside with him, although some would say that's going to take away from his target share, I also believe that's going to take away from his the attention that defenses will give him, just because they do have to keep track of Devontae Smith as well. They've also got Dallas Goddard to keep track of. This is one of the most talented cores that he's had around him in terms of receiving cores. So with that taking some of the attention away from him, I think he is in a good position to have an effective fantasy football season. I'm not putting him in the top 10 like a lot of rankings have put him. I think a lot have had him in like a consensus like 9 or 10 spot. He's sort of a
Yeah.
fringe wide receiver one for me just because of the situation he's in, but as a talent, I do believe in AJ Brown.
Yeah, for sure. As a talent, he's one of the best receivers in the league. I'm worried about situation, which is why I have him just a little bit lower. He's coming up soon. But what are we on? 13
Yep, getting into
now? Yeah,
13.
13. Um, I have DJ Moore there. Um, he's a guy that I feel like has just been on the cusp of a breakout. Really, ever since he came into the league,
Mm-hmm.
he just hasn't had the quarterback play to allow him to jump to the next level. I'm nervous because the Panthers aren't going to be very good. Matt Rule is not really a coach that I trust,
No.
and it's a little scary to have confidence in Baker Mayfield, but I think that he's far and away, like he's definitely an upgrade over Darnold, over the version of Cam Newton that they had,
The
over Teddy
ghost.
Bridgewater, over any of their most recent quarterback situations. So I think we're definitely going to see an uptick in quarterback play, and we're going to see changes in stats like this one. So catchable target rate for DJ Moore, he ranked 71st
Jesus.
among receivers in catchable target rate. That's got to jump up with Baker
Jesus.
Mayfield under the helm. Um, his slot snaps, he was ranked 79th in slot snaps. They really got to find ways to give him easier targets to get him similar to the way that we were just talking about Justin Jefferson and Cooper Kupp, right? Like his yak ability is crazy, and they're just not putting him in position to show that off. Um, and so I'm just really hoping that we get to see that from him this year. I think the upgrade at quarterback is going to be big for him. Um, and I think with Christian McCaffrey back in the fold, it's going to keep this offense on the field more often and put them in more scoring positions. So hopefully he's going to beat his career high of 4 touchdowns this season.
Yeah.
Um, that's really the hope and where a lot of the fantasy production is going to come from, in my opinion. But it has nothing to do with him as a talent, him being as low as he has been so far throughout his career. He's put up 3 straight 1,100-yard seasons. He's always had the production or the talent profile and the athletic ability to be one of the top receivers in the league. It's just whether or not Baker Mayfield's going to be able to elevate him this year.
Yeah. We've actually found a way to realign again because I've actually got DJ Moore at 13 as well.
All right.
It's like you said, I believe in him as a player. Is the player that he is. We got the opportunity to watch him play at Maryland while he was still there.
Yeah.
It's just, he, like you said, he was playing with some of the worst quarterback play we've seen in a while from just the team. That team was kind of a circus. Sam Darnold started off the year hot and didn't look like, just didn't look viable after like week 4. And then the ghost of Cam Newton came back and just also didn't do anything. And I believe, like I said before, if Baker Mayfield comes back from this, the separated shoulder, all of the injury issues he had last season, if he comes back even 3 quarters of the quarterback he was before that, that player that was one of the best deep ball throwers in the league, I think he had reached, like, he was sixth in attempts, seventh in ADOT. It was just, he was one of those guys that can push the ball down the field. And if he gets back to even 3 quarters of that, DJ Moore has the ability to skyrocket because he still finishes the wide receiver 19 last year in half PPR with some of the worst quarterback play in the league. So, like
Yeah.
you said, he really has nowhere to go from here but up as long as he remains the player that he was and he's shown us that he can be. So, yeah, I mirror a lot of the sentiments you have about DJ Moore. There's no need to really keep, beating the dead horse. It's just it's Baker Mayfield is the best quarterback that DJ Moore has played with yet.
Yeah, 100%. And I like that you mentioned that stretch from Sam Darnold. Uh, in those first 4 games, we saw what DJ Moore could potentially be with better
Mm-hmm.
quarterback play. 12.4 points, 17.9 points, 16.5, and then 27.9. He had that boom week.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, really consistent. Obviously, small sample size, and we'll see what Baker Mayfield can provide. But if that's what we can start to see this season, he's really going to take off, and I'm excited for it. Um, get down to my number 14. I do have AJ Brown. I kind of went on a long spiel about him in our NFC East breakdown. If you want to go check that out, I probably won't go quite as in depth, but we'll get into the main points that I hit on. Um, the question with him is not talent. You brought that up. I think he's one of the best and most efficient receivers in the league. Like you said, the Titans had a really high rush rate, really low pass rate, and he's going into another offense that's basically the same. So as long as he's efficient, like he should still be effective. We have the injury concerns with him. Hopefully he can stay on the field, but I'm not so sure that he'll be able to. Jalen Hurts has taken steps and seems to have improved as a passer every year in the league. Um, but if the numbers from the second half of the year continue, where they went really, really run heavy, and he was only throwing, I think, like 23 or 24 pass attempts per game, it's going to be really hard for anybody in this offense, AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goddard, to hit the ceilings that people have them projected for. I do expect their pass rate to go up a little bit, but they're still under that same offensive coordinator, or sorry, play caller, Shane Steichen, that they went to when they transitioned to that run heavy scheme last year. So we'll see what that offense shapes into. But I agree with most of what you said. I like AJ Brown as a talent. He's got the upside there. There's just some risk involved, and that's why I have him at 14.
Yeah, I like that. I really like that. I like what you said. It's like you said, it's the play calling that's the biggest issue with AJ Brown. It's just how are they going to use him. That first week of the preseason just gave us no indication of how they're going to use him.
Yeah.
But it's going to be interesting to watch. At my number 14, this is where Keenan Allen actually landed for me. I have him at number 14. He's aging. He's not aging out of the league though. He's sort of that. Keenan Allen's always one of the most underrated receivers in the league. Like you said, he's a lot of receivers' favorite receivers, which kind of shows
Yeah.
that he is a great receiver. He's one of those guys. Last year he had over 1,000 yards still, over 100 catches still, 6 touchdowns. He had one of the lowest what was it yards per route run last year, I believe, since 2014. But I
Yeah.
don't think that's indicative of how the team is going to use him or what his volume is going to look like. It's just more so what his role is in this team now. Is more of a possession guy, moving him more towards the slot. He's been running out of the slot a lot more. He's great at getting open, so he's just going to be one of those guys who's going to be a PPR monster in terms of he's going to get a lot of catches. He's going to see a lot of action. It's just whether he's going to get those red zone targets. So in terms of my list, I think my safest floor play is probably Keenan Allen out of all of these receivers in terms of you know what you're going to get out of him just about every week. He's very consistent. He's just one of those guys who he sort of commands the respect that he has on his team because he is the player that he is. He's going to be involved. I said he was aging. He's only like 30, so he's not super old. You know what I mean? So he's still out there and he's still super effective. He hasn't shown any type of signs of tailoring off. If anything, he's sort of just aged into his new role very well with the team.
Yeah. Yeah. I like what you have to say there. I do have him a little bit lower, but not too far off. My 15 is T. Higgins. Um, This is one where I feel like the community is pretty split. Like the fantasy football community is either just in love with him, obsessed with T. Higgins, especially in the dynasty community. People have him ranked in like the top five of dynasty receivers. I really like T. Higgins. I think that he's a very, very good NFL wide receiver. And I think that he proved that last year while running alongside Jamar Chase, who is otherworldly. That at times he commanded more of a target share and had even more yards through I think that last 8 game stretch or so. People like to point to that as a reason why T Higgins could potentially even flip flop with Jamar Chase, which isn't going to happen.
Hmm.
Jamar Chase is just too good for that. Um, but I do really like T Higgins as a talent. I think that he's going to take a little bit of a step back in terms of target share because Jamar Chase is just that good and he's going to earn more of it. I mentioned with Jamar Chase that Zach Taylor probably isn't going to implement a super pass heavy offense here. He's going to let game scripts kind of dictate his play calling. And so if they're leading, which they're probably going to be leading a lot, they're going to continue to run the ball. Um, so I think that the overall passing volume is probably going to be similar to what we saw last year. It's just that T. Higgins' piece of the pie is going to be a little bit smaller. That doesn't mean that I don't think he has upside. This offense has been crazy efficient. Joe Burrow is tremendous. They're going to be in scoring position a lot. So he's definitely capable of outproducing this wide receiver 15 slot that I have him in.
Hmm.
Um, but I think he's the clear number two in a good offense with a good quarterback. But I think his production is probably going to either stay the same or maybe even come down just a little bit from last year.
You know, for the longest time, not even the longest time, it's probably about a season. It was back when the Bengals were really bad and they had T. Higgins on the team. I just thought I thought he was like a little guy. You know, I didn't think that he was a six
Oh
four
no,
monster like
he's
he
huge.
is. He's gigantic.
Yeah.
But from the name T. Higgins, you wouldn't think he's a big guy. But then I watched the game.
Fair point.
Yeah, I watched the game and I was like, oh, 85. 85 is T. Higgins. Oh shit, he's a monster. I just had
Yeah.
no idea. But at my number 15 spot, I've actually got Cortland Sutton. This is where he fell for me. I'm mirroring a lot of the same sentiments that you had for him earlier. He's in a great situation. He's the true number one. He was able to perform last year. Not able to perform last year, but that's not a concern to me because the team was completely different. When you're going from a Drew Lock in a run heavy offense to a Russell Wilson, it's going to change your offense drastically.
Yeah.
Drastically, as I'm sure we're going to see this year when we watch the Broncos play and we watch the Seahawks play. There's going to
Yep.
be a gigantic difference. And that's not even a knock at Drew Lock. He's just not Russell Wilson. And I'm sure if you asked him, he would say the same. I'm not Russell Wilson. It's just,
He better.
I hope so. Or, oh, this is just another quick side note. But did you see Jacoby Brissett's interview yesterday?
Oh, about not being Deshaun Watson.
Yeah.
Dude, that one had me dying. Yeah,
Dog,
that was funny.
I was crying because that could mean so many things. But
Yeah, in more ways than one, brother.
oh, for sure. But I also like the fact that this is Cortland Sutton's second year coming off of this ACL injury as well. As you
Yeah.
know, we've kind of been pounding the table for waiting sort of an extra year. This is something we both sort of learned from Nick Ercolano as well. Is that usually ACL injuries are 2 year injuries, but the NFL is able to push people towards getting 1 year injuries. You know, modern medicine, we're able to get people back on the field quicker, but that isn't always for the best for the player. We've seen it with Saquon, where he had a huge drop off after his year coming back from an ACL injury, but we didn't see it with Cooper Cup. We were hoping that that same sentiment would mirror for Cortland Sutton, and it didn't quite. But I am excited to see him coming into this season as a number one. I think I agree with Eric with the disparity between him and Jerry Jeudy should be bigger than people are anticipating. And especially with the injury of Tim Patrick, a lot of those red zone targets are going to be just open to whoever it is that gets open. And I think Cortland Sutton's going to be the guy that Russ ends up trusting to be that guy in the red zone. So between him and Albert O, I think they're going to get a lot of red zone action. And yeah, I've got Cortland Sutton at my number, what was it, 15.
15. Yeah, I love that. One thing that I didn't mention about him that is probably worth bringing up also is that we get a head coaching change there.
That
Not
too.
just the quarterback change. We go from Vic Fangio, a guy who was slower paced and more run heavy, to Nathaniel Hackett, who was the offensive coordinator, right? Offensive coordinator for the Packers last year.
I believe so. I'm going to double check.
So to be fair, they were also slower paced, but I think that this could lead to a little bit higher pass rate. They've also talked about handing over the reins to Russell Wilson in terms of kind of calling the plays that he wants and running the offense the way that he dictates. So I'm hoping that that leads to a higher pass rate and more fancy production for Cortland Sutton.
And that is correct. Offensive coordinator for the Packers.
Okay, glad we got that checked out.
Hell yeah.
Let's move on to 16. I got Marquise Hollywood Brown. I'm
Oh,
I'm very high on him this year. That's probably a hot take. What's his ADP right now?
that
I didn't
is
even look
that is
because I
spicy.
know it's yeah,
That is spicy. I like this, man. You getting? I was getting saucy with the running backs. I feel like you're definitely getting
yeah,
saucy with the receivers.
dude. I got to. He is going as the wide receiver 23 according to Fantasy Pros ADP. I got him all the way up at 16. Um, I think he's just a super talented dude, and he showed us what he could do last year as the alpha, as the one in a run-heavy Ravens offense. I think he had over 140 targets last year, and he was inside the top 12 wide receivers before Lamar Jackson got hurt. So he has that upside. He's already shown us that in an offense that was not slow paced. They were fairly quick, but they ran the ball a ton. They didn't pass very much. Pass volume is going to go way up with this Cardinals offense. And even though I think that Lamar is a better overall quarterback, I think that Kyler is definitely a more polished passer of the football
Hmm.
than Lamar Jackson is. And especially when it comes to the deep ball, Kyler is among the best quarterbacks in the league when it comes to throwing the deep ball, up there with like the Russell Wilsons and Justin Herberts. And so I think that's going to benefit Hollywood Brown tremendously. And also, he's walking into a wide receiver one role. DeAndre Hopkins is out for the first 6 games of the season. I love DeAndre Hopkins. I think he's one of the best receivers of our generation. He's been amazing, but he's also starting to age out a little bit.
Hmm.
And I think we've seen him have trouble staying on the field with injury issues. I don't know that we've necessarily seen his play on the field decline yet, but I don't know. They gave up a first round pick for him. They clearly believe in him. I think he's the future wide receiver one of this team after Nuke leaves. And even when he comes back, I still think his target share is going to be really high. If you want to get started, if you want a hot start in your fantasy league through the first 6 weeks, Marquise Brown is the guy to go with, and I think it's only going to continue as the season goes on.
No, I like that. No, it's like I said, bro. That's a brave take, and I fuck with it because it makes sense. It really does. At my number 16, this is where T. Higgins landed for me. Again, mirroring a lot of the same sentiments. The only thing that concerns me a little bit about T. Higgins is his he's coming off an off-season shoulder injury or shoulder surgery, but
Mm-hmm.
it shouldn't mean too much. He should be back early on in the season. He hasn't started practicing yet, but that just means at the
Is
very
that true?
yeah, I don't believe he started practicing yet.
I didn't even know that.
Mm-hmm.
Good to know. Good nugget.
Mm-hmm. At least I'm pretty sure. Yeah, Bengals wide receiver T. Higgins not participating in any full team drills as he recovers from an off-season shoulder surgery. But he's
Damn,
also
okay.
already familiar with the
Significant.
system, so it shouldn't be too much of a big deal. He's already cemented his role, so it's just a matter of when he gets onto the field, which should be early on. I think they're optimistic he'll be back for week 1, but it's just something to keep an eye on. But T. Higgins is a prospect. T. Higgins is a talent, as we talked about. He outpaced Jamar Chase in terms of target share and in terms of targets. We don't believe that's going to be the case going into this year, but if his production is even somewhat close to what it was last year, he's still a great fantasy option, especially a wide receiver. He's a monster of a target, especially when it comes to red zone targets as well. Like I said earlier, I didn't know that he was 6'4" for a long time. Obviously, I've known that for the last like 2 or 3 years, but before that, I had no idea that he was as big as he is, and that means a lot. Um, Jamar Chase is going to be the alpha in this offense for sure. I feel like, and it's not even going to be a 1A 1B type of situation. But the fact that he is in an offense that is this good, there should be a lot of red zone opportunity. T. Higgins does have a lot of opportunity to eat in this offense.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with you there on T. Higgins. My number 17 is Keenan Allen. So I'm a little bit lower than you were on him, but he's been just the model of consistency these past lot of years, really. Dating back to 2018, he's had just shy of 12,000 yards, almost, or sorry, 1,200 yards almost every year. He went 1,200, 992, and then 1138 last year. So super consistent. Same in the touchdown department. He's gone 8, and 6 touchdowns since 2017. I think that's pretty indicative of his role in this offense, which is why I have Mike Williams higher than him because I think he has that double-digit touchdown upside, whereas Keenan Allen is probably going to continue along the same path that he has been for these past few years.
Mm-hmm.
But all of the same sentiments that I had for Mike Williams about this being a great offense, high passing volume, great quarterback, division conducive to shootouts, like all of that applies to Keenan Allen as well. And like you said, I think he's a really, really safe bet. I think if you're looking for safety, if you're trying to avoid risk, he's a very good target for your fantasy teams. I don't think there's a ton more to be said. I just don't think his upside is super high, which is why I have him down here at 17.
No, that's extremely fair. I always think of Keenan Allen, especially these days, as more of a safe floor, sort of a low ceiling, though. He has games where he is able to perform and pop off a little bit, but it's just not a consistent week to week thing. Like it may happen 2 or 3 weeks out of the season, but the rest of it, you're
Yeah.
going to consistently see what you see.
Yeah.
At my number 17, I actually have Jalen Waddle. It's just again, I don't trust Tua, but I do like Jalen Waddle as a player. I think that his target shares should be similar to what it was last season. Him and Tyreek are sort of the same players. Like I said, it's just two players doing the same sort of style. Tyreek is a more dynamic player to me as of right now, but I think that's just because Jalen Waddle's still kind of settling into the league and settling into what his role is going to be with his team. Uh, he's still got that quarterback, college connection that he has with Tua. How much that matters with the quarterback like Tua, I don't know, but he does. They played together, didn't they?
Hmm.
Yeah, they absolutely did.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember because I remember a couple of those years were sort of a carousel, but they definitely played together.
Yeah.
But
Judy, Waddle, Devontae Smith, all of them
yeah,
were on that same team with Tua.
it's a beast wide receiver group.
Yeah.
But I like Jalen Waddle as a talent. I am a little bit concerned, like you said earlier, about this injury situation and how that's kind of going to shape out. I know he hasn't really been participating a whole lot. They haven't really said what this injury is yet. We just know that it is a lower body leg injury. He's been wearing like a leg sleeve and some other stuff in practice, and just they've been trying to ramp him up a little bit, but he hasn't really been able to yet. So I'm hoping that he's back in time for the season and he's back healthy, but I'm not super duper confident. But if he is able to return back to the team, he's able to return back to football by week 1, I do believe this is where his ADP could potentially fall around. Or not his ADP, but his landing spot towards the end of the season. This is where he could land at like the wide receiver 17.
Yeah. I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. I agree with almost everything you said. I have him at 18. He's my next guy as well. Injury is definitely concerning, especially because it's still kind of undisclosed what he's really dealing with. He's missed a very significant portion of training camp so far. The talent is clearly there. He showed that last season. I think that this offense is going to take a step up under Mike McDaniel. I think Tua, I'm not quite as low on Tua as you. I still have my questions for sure. Um, but I think he'll probably step up from where he's been in previous years in this new regime. But Jalen Waddle, Tyreek is a different monster. He's the alpha. He's the one. And so I think Jalen Waddle, 1B, 2, whatever, he's going to be behind Tyreek Hill in the pecking order, in my opinion,
Mm-hmm.
which is why I have him a little bit lower. And the injury is also pushing him down. But like you said, they're going to be used very similarly. They're going to be asked to create a lot of yak. It's going to be a lot of low A dot, short yardage receptions, and lots of run after the catch. So he's got that ability for sure. But if he's not 100% healthy coming into the season, I'm worried about taking him any earlier than 18.
Yeah, it's just when you got a quarterback like Tua, it kind of hurts to see like two players like this that are as dynamic and are as good as these two kind of being hampered by quarterback play. So like the
Yeah.
negativity I have towards Tua is more so towards like I don't want him to fail, but I need him to step up. I need him to actually be that player that they drafted him to be. Otherwise, it's
Right.
just time to move on because they're holding back a great team.
Yeah. That makes sense. And that will get us on to my last receiver. Oh, you want to?
I think we're on 18, right?
Oh yeah, you're right. I'm one ahead of you. My fault.
Yeah, man.
You go
See, I
ahead.
did it to you. Now you try to get me
Trying to
back. I
step on
see
your
it. I
toes.
see it. I see it. My number 18 is just because I'm a little bit of a homer. It's going to be Terry McLaurin. Uh,
Okay.
so, like I kind of talked about earlier, Carson Wentz, not the greatest vehicle in terms of quarterback play. But I do believe in Terry McLaurin. I believe that, like, over these past few years, he's kind of shown that he is quarterback proof. He's just that guy who's going to go out there and get it regardless of who's throwing on the ball. Because as a Washington fan, we've seen quite a variety of people throwing him the ball, whether it be a healthy Alex Smith on one leg. We've got Taylor Heineke, Josh Johnson. It doesn't matter
Mark
because,
Sanchez even.
bro, we had the ghost of Mark Sanchez came back to throw the ball to Terry McLaurin, and he
Was
is
he ever not a ghost? Let's be real.
that's very true. That's very true.
The whole embodiment of Mark Sanchez.
He has just been a ghost since birth. But
So
Terry's
rude. He's a nice guy, good commentator, not a good football player.
oh, dude, great commentator. Even like I would have Mark Sanchez as a coach, not as a player on my
Yeah,
team.
sure. Yeah.
But Terry McLaurin's kind of proven that he's sort of quarterback proof. He's gotten 1,000 yards, over 1,000 yards in the last 2 seasons, no matter who's throwing him the ball. His rookie year almost had 1,000. I think this year he's going to see a little bit more touchdown luck. I also think that this year we're going to be able to push the ball down the field a little bit more effectively. Taylor Heineke was sort of that guy who would throw the ball up and just kind of hope that someone comes down with it, which is sort of watching a game is sort of how we felt too. We were just, oh, I hope somebody catches that.
So annoying, dude. Just lollipops up into the air like, I wonder which team's gonna get it this time.
Yeah, Taylor Heineke's out there playing fucking jackpot, but
Yeah, for real.
we're we're hoping. Well, not even hoping. Carson Wentz is an upgrade over Taylor Heineke. It's just a matter of how much of an upgrade he is.
Yeah.
So, me personally, I think that oh god, I'm fumbling over my words right now. Terry McLaurin is the guy in this offense. We've proven that time and time again. The team has said nothing but that time and time again. We paid him this offseason. He's just last year he was on the field for 91% of passing plays. So he's going to be out there. It's just a matter of if the ball can get to him, and I think it can. I think it really doesn't matter at this point. I think Terry's going to be the guy who's going to get the ball regardless of who the situation is, who the quarterback is. So, yeah.
Yeah, I like that. I think the disrespect on Terry is always too much. He's always underrated, and it's only because of quarterback play that's holding him back. He's incredibly talented. I do have him a little bit lower. I think that is maybe we're on opposite sides here, where like your fandom makes you a homer, makes you want to put him a little higher. For me, I don't want to take anybody on the Commanders. I don't want that on my fantasy team.
Oh,
I'm not mixing those two worlds. That's just too much for me.
me picking up Brian
Um,
Robinson in our Dynasty League was my first time drafting a Washington player ever.
yeah, yeah. Exposure to our team is scary.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I will get to him in just a few spots. My 19 is Allen Robinson. And he is the last in this big group of guys, this tier where that I'm really, really targeting. Pretty much everybody in that group in rounds like 3 through 6. I love his upside in this offense. He comes in, immediately takes over the wide receiver 2 role in a Sean McVay and Matt Stafford led Rams offense that's going to be super high powered. They're going to score a lot. And he is just a red zone weapon. Obviously, last year was not what you want to see from Allen Robinson, but I think that that was mostly just because he hated the situation that he was in. The coaching staff didn't really believe in him, wasn't using him the way that he was supposed to. They hadn't surrounded him with talent, hadn't gotten him a quarterback, and so I think he was kind of just checked out of the Bears, which is why he performed as poorly as he did, along with just Justin Fields' inconsistencies as a quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
If you do go back though and look at Matt Harmon's reception perception, even last year, even in a really really down year, he was still separating amongst the best receivers in the league. He was beating DBs just as well as he has been throughout his career up to this point. So I don't think he's lost a step. I don't think he's any less talented than he has been. And I think he just comes into a vastly superior situation with really high touchdown upside.
No, I like that. I really do like that a lot. Allen Robinson, they've been, like you said, the Rams have sort of been beating the table, banging the table for Allen Robinson as well. They've all
Yeah,
talked very highly of him. Cooper Cup loves him as well. He's just one of those guys you can kind of bet on. I'm a little, just a tad lower than him, just because I have Deontay Johnson placed at my 19. Now, I know that he has Mitchell Trubisky at quarterback. He's got Kenny Pickett at quarterback. He's got possibly Mason Rudolph at quarterback. We don't know who the starting quarterback is for the Steelers, but
yeah,
I did sort of watch their preseason game, the first one at least, and the one thing that I found that was kind of strange, it was so weird watching a Steelers game where the quarterback could actually move around, you know?
yeah.
Could actually extend the play a little bit, could actually give receivers time to develop into their routes a little by just improvising with their legs. It was weird to see that from the Steelers. So it gives me a little bit more hope. This is still 3 spots below ADP for Deontay Johnson. So for me to take him, he would need to fall this far. I think consensus right now, he's like in the wide receiver 16 ADP wise. I'm not quite
Yeah.
that high. I think that this Steelers team is going to be pretty bad. I think the quarterback play is going to be pretty bad. But it is going to be a nice change, at least for Deontay Johnson. And one thing that we're relying on is that he has that same sort of volume that he has had the last like 3 years, which I believe he can. I think he's that guy that I think after sort of his a lot of his drops that he had sort of dropped his stock in terms of fantasy. But I think that after there was a point in time where he had a lot of drops and Mike Tomlin benched him for it. Said, "Yeah, you're not playing this
Yeah.
week." He benched him for like a good like 2 or 3 weeks. And honestly, since he's come back from there, it hasn't been that much of an issue. There's been a lot of this narrative saying that like he still gets a lot of drops. Me personally, I haven't seen it, and I watched a lot of Steelers games last year because I had Najee Harris on one of my teams, and I like to watch him run 3 feet and trip and fall or smack into somebody. But Deontay Johnson is one of those guys where if he gets the ball, he is a good player. He's a dynamic player in this league. He can make something happen with it. It's just a matter of if they can get the ball to him. And surprisingly, I think they can. I think this quarterback group, at the very least, is going to be pushed more towards getting the ball out. Getting the ball down the field, pushing the ball because Ben literally was not able to do that last year with his noodle arm. He just couldn't get it down the field. So we're going to see a more dynamic Steelers team. I don't know if that means we're going to see a better Steelers team, but definitely more dynamic. So I've got Deontay Johnson at my 19, and then rolling in the 20 is where I placed Allen Robinson. For a lot of the same reasons you said, he's in a highly effective offense. He's going to be a red zone target. He's still a great receiver in this league, despite what has happened with him and the situations he's been in. Because let's be honest, besides David Montgomery, no one's really done well in a Matt Nagy offense. And even then, David Montgomery, not very effective, not very efficient. So to see him move into a situation where he's got a great coach in Sean McVay, who's going to be able to draw up plays to get him the ball, and take advantage of the fact that he is as good at separating as he is. He's going to be alongside a true wide receiver one in Cooper Kupp. It's a totally different situation that we've never seen Allen Robinson in, and I think he's going to capitalize on it. The biggest question mark, like we talked about earlier with Cooper Kupp, is Matt Stafford and how long that elbow is going to hold up, if it's going to be able to hold up, and if that's going to affect his play, which I don't think it should, but as the days go on, I'm getting more and more concerned about it. But I do love Allen Robinson as a player. I wish that Washington had gotten him all the opportunities that we had, but we didn't. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I love Allen Robinson at this 20 spot. He's definitely a wide receiver, too. And I think he's going to finish well above this spot, to be honest with you. So, yeah.
Yeah. There is a little bit of risk baked in there. So I see, pushing him down a little bit, even if you think his upside is higher than that.
Mm-hmm.
I respect it. For me, my 19 to 20 is a teardrop, like I mentioned. So I am taking these guys a little bit later than the previous group I had ahead of them. But mine is also Deontay Johnson. So we just had Allen Robinson and Deontay flip flopped. Um, I'm worried about this offense as a whole. Even with Ben and his noodle arm, right? Like, even if he wasn't the most effective, they were one of the highest. They had one of the highest pass rates in the league last year,
True.
and just the connection between Ben Roethlisberger and Deontay Johnson as his clear number one target that he hit all the time isn't there anymore. You're transitioning quarterbacks, so I think that connection is going to be lost. I think that their pass rate is going to go dramatically down, at least down to middle of the league, if not below that. And yeah, we don't even know who the starting quarterback is going to be yet. We don't know what that's going to look like. I think you make good points that they're going to probably be more dynamic. They're going to be able to extend the play, probably throw the ball a little bit further down the field, but I don't know that the play is going to overall be any better than what we saw from Ben and with less volume. And not to mention, George Pickens is now added to the equation. He's a
True.
guy that's been getting tons of training camp hype, really, really talented player out of Georgia, to just add, even more target competition to the mix. Um, like, there are positives with Deontay. I think he is still the clear wide receiver one. I think he's the possession guy. I think he's super duper talented. Um, but there's a lot of mouths to feed in an uncertain quarterback situation with maybe not the highest pass volume. It's just not the greatest recipe for success.
No, I agree with that. I agree with a lot of those sentiments. I guess I have Deontay as high as I do just based off of who he is as a player. I like the talent of Deontay Johnson
Yeah.
more than the situation, for sure. But yeah, man, it's gonna be an interesting team to watch. And then, like you said, NFL young boy, he's always something to keep track of as well. That's his nickname, right?
I love
I
that for him.
fucking love
Yeah,
that
yeah, I
shit.
did see that.
I love that shit.
Yeah. You want to go with 21 or shall I?
I can start off with 21.
Let's
So
hear it.
my 21 spot, I've got Brandon Cooks.
Okay.
I believe that last year we kind of saw what his ceiling was, and his ceiling, he ended up as wide receiver 20 in fantasy last year. So I think with the year of Davis Mills sort of settling into the position of quarterback for this team, I think he's going to get better. I don't think Brandon Cooks is going to thrive in this offense. I don't think anyone's really going to thrive in this offense. It's sort of just going to be them testing out to see who works because they are in a rebuild. Brandon Cooks is only 28 years old. That's something I always forget about. I always think of him in like that Keenan Allen in his 30s range, and he's just younger than that. He's also been extremely effective in his time that he's been playing. He's been a 1,000 yard receiver more often than he hasn't, way more often than he hasn't. He's just
Hasn't
one
he
of
been a 1,000 yard receiver in almost every year of his career except for like one due to injury or something like that? Or am I overstating him?
it's every year except for two. Every year except for two.
Two.
That's
Okay.
last year with the Rams, but I guess kind of also due to injury. But he only missed 2 games
Yeah.
that year.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely that. I think it was his rookie year that, that he also had 500 yards.
Yeah.
But he's a solid fantasy option. He's not an exciting fantasy option whatsoever. He's one of those guys that he's a name, and he's a name that you can kind of trust, but he's also a name that's in a bad situation. So it's a little bit trickier. I think he's going to end up landing around this 20 spot. He could very well outperform this spot as well. But I think in terms of just this upside that this Texans offense has, um, they're going to be throwing the ball a lot because I don't imagine them being in the lead very often. And yeah, man, I don't believe in Brandon Cooks enough to have him higher than this spot, but I also believe that he is a good enough player that he's not going to land below this spot, if that makes any
Yeah, I
sense.
think no, it does. It makes a lot of sense. I think that that's fair. He's proved to be incredibly consistent throughout his years, regardless of what team he's on or quarterback situation. He's moved around a lot, and he's still been really effective wherever he's been. Um, I actually don't have him in my top 24. It was something that I was debating pretty heavily. I think maybe I'm a little too low on him, but I'll talk about him a little bit in kind of our honorable mentions. My 21 is Terry McLaurin. I don't think I need to go too in depth. Everything that you said, I echo the same sentiments. Um, Carson Wentz, even though we've made the argument that he was the reason Michael Pittman didn't have a full breakout last year, like even that is still better than what we were getting from Taylor Heineke or any of the other previous quarterback options that we've seen in recent years in Washington. So he's got an upgrade in that category. He's incredibly talented, one of the more talented wide receivers in the league. That alone, I think, is reason enough to have him this high. But yeah, like I said, as a Commanders fan, this scares me. I probably still won't be drafting him. Just I don't know. It's hard for me to believe from a fantasy perspective in any of the players on this team, just because I haven't seen them do it at all recently.
No, that's extremely fair. It's yeah, we know what the Commanders are, bro. We've been watching our entire lives, so we
25 years of shit.
yeah, bro. It's just disappointment after disappointment, and Terry's been a bright spot in all of that.
Oh
But
yeah,
but is he bright enough to outshine the situation? Is the question. So
fucking hope so, but we'll
yeah,
see.
we're definitely gonna see. So where does that move us to? 22.
22.
This
Yeah.
is actually where Marquise Brown landed for me. I know you were a lot higher on Marquise Brown than I am.
Hulo, coward.
That's fair. That's fair. That's fair. It's just I don't know. He had to make my list because of how much I do believe in that quarterback college connection, as we talked about time and time again. They played together at Oklahoma. And Marquise Brown has shown us that he can be an elite fantasy option. He's operated and been the wide receiver one for many weeks in fantasy before, injuries will hit or just general. The Ravens were just a bad situation last year. Lamar went down. Tyler Huntley went down for a little bit. They were just kind of putting in whoever they could to fill in the spots, and they were still a decent team, and Marquise Brown still had a decent season. So to see him in it's not a better situation. I think it's more of a lateral move, like we kind of talked about earlier. I think Lamar is the better overall quarterback prospect, but I do think Kyler is a better thrower. And he's landed in a spot where he's going to have to be that wide receiver one, especially to start out the season because DeAndre Hopkins is out. I very well believe in my heart that Marquise Brown is going to outperform this spot. I just feel like the people above him are a little bit safer, I guess. You know?
I think that that's fair.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
They're a little bit safer, but I do very well believe that Marquise Brown is not going to finish as the wide receiver 22. He's probably going to finish more within like. Where did you landed him around like 16 for you, didn't he?
16. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he is going to end more so in that range, if not higher, because that first 6 weeks should be pretty crazy to watch.
Yeah. Yeah. I love me some Hollywood Brown this year. My 22 is Amon-Ra St. Brown. Um, I I think this is kind of right around where his ADP is. Uh, Fantasy Pros has him as the 21st receiver off the board. But I feel like I don't know. Fantasy Pros ADP is a little bit weird sometimes because like you get a mixture of different sources where you get like the sharp leagues and you also get some of the home leagues. I feel like in home leagues he's going to go quite a bit later than this.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I think he could definitely be a value in those middle rounds, maybe sixth, maybe even seventh round if you can get him there. Um, he just had that monster stretch, just league winner type stretch at the end of last season. I have the numbers pulled up in front of me. I believe it was the last 6 games. Yeah, the last 6 games of the season, he went for 19.8, 11.3, 19.5, 21.5, 31.4, and 22.1 fantasy points. He
Jesus,
blew up and had, I think, close to, if not over, a 30% target share in all of those games, which
33%.
is astronomical, dude.
Yeah,
33%. That's crazy.
yeah.
Like Justin Jefferson didn't get that last year. He was hovering around like 29 or 30%. And obviously, Amon-Ra is not Justin Jefferson. He's not going to have over a 30% target share on the season throughout the whole season this year. But I wouldn't be surprised if it's, 25, 26%. Um, the offseason drumbeat for Amon-Ra has been loud and it's been positive. The team clearly likes him. And I think they have him slotted in as that wide receiver one. They bring in DJ Chark, but he's an impact player in a different part of the field than Amon-Ra is. Amon-Ra is that short and intermediate guy where DJ Chark is a field stretcher. Same with Jamison Williams when he comes back. Um, TJ Hawkinson hasn't proven to me that he demands targets.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and he's been in the league a lot longer than Amon-Ra has. So, like Amon-Ra has already proven that to me that he is going to earn those targets. So I really like him this year. I think the Lions' offense is an ascending one. Their offensive line is good. Um, their offensive coordinator is pretty forward thinking, and I think is going to go a little bit more pass heavy. So I like the situation around him. I like the talent, and I think he could be a value if you take him as the 22nd wide receiver.
No, that's 100% fair because I actually have him at by 23. I think
Okay.
it's like you said, he's going to be that guy, especially in home leagues. Unless you're super familiar with fantasy football and you kind of live in this space, he's going to end up falling just because he's on the Lions. People don't trust the Lions as a name, even though, like you said, they are an ascending offense. Jared Goff doesn't really get. He gets a lot more hate than he deserves. It's not that he's a great quarterback or even a good quarterback, but he gets a lot more. He's a competent quarterback at the very least when put in the right situations. He's got all of the metrics you could kind of look for in a quarterback. It's just a matter of whether he's able to make the decisions or not. That's where Jared Goff falls short. And when the decision is just throw the ball to Amon-Ra St. Brown, he just about couldn't go wrong with that. And they showed us that at the end of last season where he did win a lot of people leagues. I remember he got me to the championship in one league because I had him on the bench. People were talking about him saying like he might be a guy, but no one would pick him up off waivers just because he was on the Lions. And he ended up being a beast down the stretch like Eric talked about. He's just volume is one thing where you can say he was in a situation where, he was one of a few options the team had because they were going through a lot of injuries at that point. But a 33% target share, he shouldn't have anything close to that this year. But at the same time, he's proven that he can handle that because what people don't realize is even though he was the only option that team had, he's going up against number one corners, He's going up against number one competition. He still has to make all of these catches at the end of the day. It's not like, oh, he's got 33% target share. Anybody can do that. You still have to go out there and you still have to perform. And like Eric said, he's proven that he can perform. So at that point, he should go a lot higher than people are taking him. But he's
Yeah,
going to end up sliding in a lot of leagues. And if you're that guy who can catch that, he may be an amazing value for your team.
snatch him up for
Mm-hmm.
sure. Yeah, I think he's too undervalued. Another guy that I think, based on injury, which is fair, I think is a little bit undervalued is Chris Godwin, who I have at my wide receiver 23. I think the upside is just too high with him. He finished last year, I think, as the wide receiver 17, but he also missed what 4 games.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of fantasy points per game, he finished as the wide receiver 9. He's in the pass heaviest offense in the league with a quarterback like Tom Brady that's gonna throw for a ton of yards, a ton of touchdowns. All the same arguments that I made for Mike Evans, except for he's not quite the same red zone threat, but he's more of the possession guy. He's the trusted target in the middle of the field. Pick up the third down.
Mm-hmm.
He's the guy that Tom Brady looks to. So I think he's going to have more of the yardage, probably less of the touchdowns than you're going to get from Mike Evans. And I think that this 23 overall ranking kind of bakes in the slow start that he's probably going to have due to that ACL injury.
Mm-hmm.
Like you mentioned earlier in the episode, we typically preach you want to wait until year 2 after ACL injuries. Betting on guys immediately after is a little sketchy. We have seen it on a couple occasions, like you mentioned with Cooper Kupp. I tend to just kind of go with what I'm hearing from like the Twitter injury doctors. Edwin Porras, FB Injury Doc, has been pounding the table for Chris Godwin, saying that this is right along the expected timeline for him of recovery. He's hitting all of the major checkpoints that you want to see. And like based on historical performance of similar athletic profile receivers coming off of ACL tears, he thinks that he could still have a very productive season this year. So I think he's just sliding too far for a guy that I think has top 10 wide receiver upside in his range of outcomes.
About to say he was on pace for way over 100 catches last year too, way over. Because I think
Yeah,
when he went down, he had like 98 at that point.
yeah,
So he's just a super trusted target in that offense. So we're rolling into our 24 spot now, right?
yes, yeah,
All right. So my 24 spot is a guy who could probably go out there and win a lot of leagues if he is to perform anywhere near the capacity that he was before. All of the injury plagues, all of the injury bugs. He hasn't played in a year and a half, but the team has done nothing but give him, you know, sort of praise throughout camp. He's currently dealing with with an injury issue right now, which we hope will be settled by the time he comes back in. But as you guys know, if you've done anything with keeping up with fantasy football or any type of NFL news, I'm talking about Michael Thomas, the guy who is the all time, not all time. He has the reception record for most in the single season. He is the guy in this offense. He was the guy in this offense before he went down. It's just a matter of what he can come back like. I think he's one of those guys that people are going to pick up in those mid to late rounds. And if he performs at anywhere near the level that he was before, he's going to skyrocket. We know that Jameis loves to throw the ball. We know that a lot of people call Michael Thomas slant boy, but he also is known for running a good amount of deep routes too. He's not just a slant short down receiver that people try to box him in as, much to his chagrin on social media. But Michael Thomas is one of those guys that I believe is going to be a league winner this year just because of how far he has fallen from where he was at prior to these injuries.
yeah. I like that take. He just barely missed the cut. He's in my honorable mentions for my top 24. I agree with what you have to say. You're, again, more of a Jameis stan for sure than I am, so I can see why you would have him up there in your top 24.
Oh, yeah.
I'll talk about him a little bit more when we get into our honorable mentions. The guy that I do have at 24, I don't know that I'm proud of it. It's somebody that I've kind of flip-flopped on a little bit. We've talked about him. The Twitter buzz around him has been crazy. You either love him or you hate him. I'm finding myself kind of falling somewhere in between, and that's Gabe Davis.
Ooh.
Yeah, it. The thing is, I don't know that he's really that good. I'm not sure that he's super talented. If you look at Matt Harmon's reception perception, he's not a special separator. He's not really above league average. I think he's below league average as a separator on most of his routes. So this one's scary. Typically, you want to bet on talent, and that's what I've done throughout most of my rankings so far in the top 24. This one is purely situation based.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he's the clear wide receiver two, right? Like the guys that I like in this offense. Isaiah McKenzie is another guy that we'll talk about as a late round value. Jameson Crowder, if he gets involved, whatever, stuff like that. But he's clearly the big body red zone threat. I think he has the opportunity to score a crazy amount of touchdowns in this offense. It's going to be a ridiculously pass heavy, ridiculously high paced, and efficient offense out there in Buffalo. And if he's the clear wide receiver, too, even if Stephon Diggs is getting 27, 28, 29, 30% target share, there's still going to be so much passing volume to go around for Gabe Davis to absorb. Um, this one's risky. This one's. I don't even know that it's that risky is the thing.
His
Like,
ADP has
how.
actually fallen a good bit since we first did our AFC East breakdown.
Yeah.
So I think right now he's valued at like the wide receiver 29.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think the issue that I had with him was that he was just overpriced. He was going inside that top 20, which was way too rich for my blood. But the opportunity is there for him if he is even half decent as a player. Like, he's going to score a ton of touchdowns. He's going to soak up a bunch of targets. And I don't know. He could blow up or he could be just average. Like, I don't think even picking him in this range, I don't think you're wasting a pick. I don't think he's gonna total dud on you,
Mm-hmm.
but he's got super high upside, which is why I have him here.
Like you said, he's a fringe wide receiver too, with a lot of upside and a great offense. So just
Fantastic offense.
yeah.
Yeah.
So we're gonna see how they're gonna use him. If it's anything like that playoff game, if it's even half of that playoff game,
Yeah.
it's incredible.
If it's a fourth of that playoff game, it'll still be really good.
Yeah, it'd be ridiculous. So I like those sentiments a lot. That means a lot. I like that. So I guess now
All
we've
right.
moved on to our honorable mentions, just because
Yep.
we got to show some love to the honorable mentions, just because there's so many wide receivers, dude. There's so many.
There's a ton of them.
So
A ton
if
of them.
someone didn't make our list that you love, let us know down in the comments if there's someone that you wish was in your or you have in your top 24. Maybe you don't value as highly, and let us know why. So yeah, I guess just to start it off, Eric kind of knows who one of my honorable mentions is. I'm gonna go ahead and get it out the way. It is Mr. Brandon Ayuk from the San Francisco
Okay.
49ers.
All
I
right.
think that he's somebody that gets slept on a lot because of how his season started last year. He was in the doghouse with this team. He didn't really get a whole lot of burn. A lot of people spent earlier picks on him because they thought he was going to be the guy because that's what every single beat reporter was saying. And then that turned out to be absolutely not the case when the season started. So, with that sentiment in mind, I like Brandon Ayuk a lot because a lot of the reports, even last season when he was in the doghouse, were leaning towards Trey Lance loves this guy. They practice a lot. Whenever he was working with a wide receiver on the sidelines, it was just about always Brandon Ayuk. Now, does this mean I think that Trey Lance values Brandon Ayuk over Debo Samuel? Absolutely not, because they are two different players in two completely different tiers. But I do believe that Brandon Ayuk is going to be more involved in this offense than last year, especially early on. And I think he does have that potential to sort of reach that sort of get back to that form that he had his rookie year when people were like, this is going to be one of the next guys in fantasy. And he sort of took a step back, definitely had a sophomore slump, which I hope gets corrected a lot going into this next year. So I've got Brandon Ayuk to start off my honorable mentions.
Yeah, a lot has been, or like, there's been a lot of buzz about his connection with Trey Lance so far throughout training camp. It's definitely positive to see. I'm not nearly as high on him, I think, as you are. I'm just worried about target competition there, like you said, with Debo Samuel, George Kittle, and less passing volume
Mm-hmm.
with Trey Lance at quarterback. But I do like that. I think he definitely has upside there. Um, I want to run through these just a little bit quicker because I
Hmm.
think we're pushing close to 2 hours at this point.
Yeah, we are.
I have Brandon Cooks in here, a guy that I was just talking about. I think I might have a little bit too low. He's been a model of consistency throughout his career. He is coming into year two with Davis Mills, and Davis Mills is like the true starter. He's not going to be switching back and forth like they had last year. But I do think last year was probably his ceiling, and he finished as the wide receiver 20. So it's hard for me to believe that he's going to be that efficient and have that high of a target share again. When you got guys that, I don't love, but Nico Collins has been getting a lot of hype and buzz. I think his target share is going to rise. So I have him just a little bit outside of my top 24. I'll run through a couple of these guys as well. I got Rashad Bateman just on the outside. He's now the clear wide receiver one for the Ravens. They're going to be very run heavy, but Gus Edwards is on the PUP to start the year. J.K. Dobbins still isn't practicing in team drills. Mike Davis looks like he's going to be the guy to start the season. So maybe they're going to have to start a little bit pass heavier than they wanted to. Rashad Bateman is a prospect that I really liked coming out of Minnesota. And I think if given the opportunity, he can be an alpha number one wide receiver. And I think he could finish above, this honorable mentions category. I also have Michael Thomas here, who you talked about. I echo a lot of the same sentiments that you had. The last time we saw him on the field, he was the overall wide receiver one. A lot has happened since then. He's gone through a lot of injury. Quarterback has changed, and all of that is very significant and matters, and which is why I have him ranked as low as I do. But he's definitely somebody with really high upside, and like you mentioned, maybe could even be a league winner this year.
Yeah, very much agree. And then just to finish out mine as well, just some people that I'd like to keep an eye on, or like other people to keep an eye on. Christian Kirk, just at the value that he's going at, but he is the wide receiver one for the Jaguars. At least that's how we like to feel like he's operating. He's getting paid the most money out of everybody on that team. He's sort of that guy that broke the league with his contract. So I would hope that the Jaguars will use him in that capacity. And he kind of showed last year what he could do operating in sort of an alpha position when DeAndre Hopkins was out for a few of those games. And he honestly did nothing but step up to the plate. He was an effective wide receiver. He's good at getting open. He's got that home run speed. He's just one of those guys who can get it done if given the opportunity. It's just a matter if the Jaguars take that step up. Someone else to keep an eye on for me is Robert Woods with the Titans. Even though they're a very run heavy team, everything flows through Derrick Henry. I do believe that he does have this alpha spot for a reason because the team should trust him to get the job done. He's coming off an injury, but at the same time, I feel like we know who Robert Woods is, and he's never been like a super dynamic, super explosive player. He's always been very consistent, and I like to see that same level of consistency with the Titans. And just to round it off, another person to keep an eye on is just every receiver on the Kansas City Chiefs. None of them made our
True.
list because they're just all new to the team. So we have no idea who the guy is going to be on that team. But we do know Patrick Mahomes is one of the most talented, if not the most talented quarterback we've ever seen enter the league. And one of these guys is going to be the guy. There's just no way that they make it through this whole season and they're all just mediocre unless Patrick Mahomes himself takes a step back. So whether that's Juju, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, or the rookie Sky Moore, someone on this team besides Travis Kelsey is going to be the guy.
Yeah, 100%.
Mm-hmm.
Two more guys that I had almost make my list: Darnell Mooney, DK Metcalf. I won't even really get into it, but Darnell Mooney is going to be just a target monster. DK Metcalf is just so incredibly talented, just a bad situation.
Mm-hmm.
And then you mentioned Christian Kirk. Really like that take. I have him in my list of late round values. He balled in his short time on the field in the preseason in week two. That was
Mm-hmm.
his first appearance on the field with the Jaguars, and he got so many targets. His target share was huge. I also have guys like Elijah Moore, Kadarius Toney, and Isaiah McKenzie in
Mm-hmm.
late round value category. So just names to look out for later in your drafts that people are probably going to ignore. So that does it for us for a lot of things, not just our wide receiver rankings, but that finishes out all of our videos that we wanted to get out before the season as far as our divisional ranking or our divisional breakdowns, our positional rankings. One thing I wanted to mention is
Mm-hmm.
that these positional rankings are fluid. We are changing them. I'm updating them as we go. I think we should probably do another video where we kind of go through anything that we've updated since previous weeks when we've put these out, because I've definitely changed things around a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so know that these things aren't static. We're keeping these updated for you guys, trying to get you the best information possible.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we appreciate you for sticking around for as long as you have. We know this was a long video, but super important. Wide receiver values are nice to find late in drafts. Will, anything you want to say to the people before we head out of here?
Nah, man. Like if you made it this far in the video, like we've always said, we love you for making it this far. We're out here trying to give the best information we can, give the most context we can. This was a longer video, but at the same time, there's a lot of wide receivers out there, man. So you
Yeah.
want to do your best to stay informed, and just if you want to stay informed, watch the channel. We're gonna be keeping up with
Subscribe to
stuff.
us.
Subscribe, and yeah, just to mirror kind of what Eric said, we're kind of staring into the void right now. We got a lot of short form content we want to get out there, a lot of updates. Mock draft coming up next week. That's something to be excited for.
Excited for that one. Yeah.
Yeah. So we got some good stuff coming up for you guys.
Yeah. Big excited for a little bit more short form content and the new stuff that we have coming for you guys. Thank you for sticking with us. We appreciate you. Like, subscribe,
Mm-hmm.
comment. Please communicate with us. That's what we're looking for, trying to build a community. But yeah, we'll catch you next week with our next mock draft video.
Yep.
Peace out.
Peace.